where it is the fourth week of the Sean Combs sex trafficking trial.
It was about the money. Two witnesses taking the stand talking about just that in the sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy trial against Sean Diddy Combs.
All right, welcome to week 4 of the Sean P. Diddy Combs trial, and it's getting crazy. All right, welcome to my ongoing coverage of the Sean P. Diddy Combs racketeering trial.
The term racketeering is a catch-all that describes all of the mob's illegal activities, from extortion and loan sharking to union infiltration and murder. But rather than tying these crimes to an individual mobster, RICO ties them to a corrupt organization, in this case, an organized crime family. If prosecutors can prove the head of this organization, the boss of the family, is aware of and sanctions the street-level crimes, they'll finally have the ability to go after him.
Now, as I said earlier, we are in week 4 of this trial, and it looks like P. Diddy is headed to a real conviction here. Now, because it's a law channel, I want to start with this chart. This chart lists the charges in the indictment that P. Diddy is facing. Those charges are kidnapping, arson, bribery, witness tampering, forced labor, sex trafficking, prostitution, and drug distribution. Now, as the indictment says, you have to prove that defendant P. Diddy agreed to conspire to commit 2 of these racketeering acts. So essentially, they got to show that Puffy conspired to commit 2 out of these 8, and then RICO is on the table. So now that we understand where these 8 charges came from, only needing 2 to stick, I took those 8 charges and put them in another chart alongside the witnesses who've testified to some of the elements necessary for the government to prove these crimes. So let's go through it. Kidnapping, 13A. Capricorn Clark testified that she was kidnapped, and Cassie Ventura backed up her story. So those 2 witnesses testified to the kidnapping. For 13B, arson, we have Kid Cudi's car. Capricorn Clark also spoke to that. We got the Los Angeles Fire Department and the LAPD who are also involved. And again, Cassie Ventura also gave testimony about Kid Cudi's car being blown up. Now, when we talk about 13C, which is bribery of a witness, we got Carrie Morgan and Israel Flores. Israel Flores worked at the hotel where the video was taken of Cassie being beaten by Diddy. Israel said that he was offered some cash by Diddy to not say anything. But today we had another witness testify that guess what? He was actually offered some money too.
What Eddy Garcia said happened is that Combs' assistant at the time, Christina Coram, reached out to him and she wanted to know what was on this tape. They wanted to get a hold of it. She said that Combs had been intoxicated. He didn't remember what had happened, and she wanted to know what they were dealing with.
So he comes in for a shift. He gets a call from Combs' assistant and says, hey, we really want to see that video. We know is this, that, and the other. And he said, no, you can't. I can't show it to you. You got to talk to management. Then that assistant shows up at the hotel, says that she wants to speak to him. He goes down. In person, again, explains, I can't give you the video. I can't show you the video. But according to his testimony, he tells her it's not good. He then goes back up and gets another call from the assistant who puts Combs on the phone.
So this is just a barrage.
It is a barrage. Combs makes it very clear that he's worried about this video. He says he sounds nervous. He says, you've got to talk to my manager. Well, then they call back again and say, we spoke to the manager. He's agreed to $50,000. And this security guard takes a USB to an apartment address where Combs is, where his security guards are, where this assistant is. And he is handed a brown paper bag with $100,000 in cash. And he has to sign an NDA.
In that moment.
And that's how, and assurances that it was the only copy of the video.
That this is the end of this transaction.
That's exactly right. And he says Combs repeatedly calls him his angel, and it's great that he's doing this, but we have to be on the same page, according to his testimony. Sort of a riveting idea and an insight into the fact that Combs knew how bad it was, according to this testimony today on the stand, and wanted to get his hands on it because, in his words, it was potentially going to ruin his career, is what he said.
So from today's testimony, we have another person under bribery of a witness. His name is Eddy Garcia. Then we also have to talk about witness tampering. Again, we got the people who were bribed, plus Regina Ventura, that's Cassie's mother. We got Capricorn Clark, Kid Cudi, and Mia. And if you think about it, if you're bribing a witness, you're also tampering with that witness. So it kind of, you get a 2-for-1 for that. Then we also have forced labor. Mia, Cassie Ventura, George Kaplan, and Deontay Nash. Now, forced labor for Mia and Cassie is those, we've got to be up for 24 hours. We can't get any sleep. We're forced to work days in a row, especially for Cassie because she did say she wanted to leave some of those places and she wasn't allowed to leave. The freak-offs were mandatory, not optional. Next, when it comes to sex trafficking, we have the who's who of people. We got Cassie Ventura and Mia, who are really the subjects of the sex trafficking, Cassie more so. And then you had Israel Flores, because remember, he was saying that she was trying to leave and she couldn't leave because she was being beat up at the hotel. That's the security guard. Daniel Phillips, who is one of the prostitutes. David James, George Kaplan, Deontay Nash, Morales, and the Punisher, Shiara Haynes. Now, these were the witnesses who talked about how they either had sex with Cassie, she didn't want to be there was force involved. For instance, when she wanted to leave one of the freak-offs, she was beaten. There's a lot there for the sex trafficking. But these are all the witnesses that have spoken to some of the elements of sex trafficking the government's trying to prove. Next, we get the prostitution, which I'm going to tell you, I think this is a home freaking run for the government because 13G is transporting prostitutes across state lines to have sex, and Daniel Phillips and Shiara Haynes, the Punisher, both said that they were traveling across state lines to have sex with Cassie Ventura in different places, all paid for by Sean Combs. Also, you got George Kaplan and Frederick, who was a manager at one of the hotels. They all testified to the quote-unquote freak-offs that occurred across various states. And last but not least, we have drug distribution, which people get confused about because supplying drugs to people at parties is distributing drugs. It's a little different because you don't have to sell them, but when you're giving them out, it's just as bad. And you got Cassie Ventura, David James, the agent who found drugs in one of the raids, George Kaplan and Capricorn Clark, and many others also talked about there being drugs at the freak-offs and the parties and all this other stuff. So drug distribution seems to be another home run when for the government to only need 2 of these charges, 2 out of 8 of these things to really stick, you're looking at some real problems for the diddler. Along with those damaging witnesses, we also had Derek Ferguson, and he was the CFO of Bad Boy Entertainment. Now, he testified on the connection between Combs' businesses and these freak-off sex trafficking things. Specifically, how employees were reimbursed for their expenses with corporate cards. Several of Combs' assistants had testified about purchasing so-called freak-off essentials at Combs' behest.
On direct, where Ferguson is now testifying about a $20,000 transaction that came in from Cassie Ventura's father. Now, this makes us look back to Cassie Ventura's mother's testimony, where she was asked by Combs for $20,000 in exchange for not putting out explicit videos of Cassie, and because she thought Combs was going to hurt her if he did not receive that $20,000. So there you have a business transaction through the company that links directly back to what would be considered illegal conduct. And that's why this might have started off a bit slow, but that type of link speak to the prosecution's case, where they say Combs' businesses are really just fronts for this criminal enterprise. And so I'm seeing that link start to come to fruition, where I'm understanding more about the prosecution's criminal enterprise.
Now, real talk, I just don't see how this guy's going to get off from this. There may be some miracle jury verdict that I'm just not expecting. But when you look at this chart, it just seems like they got him for RICO. Now, you may not believe the sex trafficking, you may not believe 1 or 2 of these charges, but for sure, the transportation of prostitutes across state lines, 13G, check. Drug distribution, 13H, check. Forced labor, witness tampering, bribery of a witness. How many witnesses have come and said we were bribed? They got like 3 other people who they haven't brought up yet, who are also given money. Arson, kidnapping. And there's this understanding out there in the public that I think I need to clear up. They don't have to prove Diddy did this stuff. They just have to prove that Diddy was aware of it and sanctioned it. So that gives him even more liability on the RICO end. So as we continue to move through week 4, my prediction is Diddy is going to jail for a long time. He's looking at a minimum of a decade in prison. And as a 50-something-year-old man, he's probably not going to be out till after he's collected Social Security, because these charges are unbelievably serious. So tell me where you disagree in the comment section. If you think Diddy's gonna walk and you believe these charges are bogus, let me know. I want to hear your reasoning, because as of right now, Diddy looks like he's going to jail. Now, don't forget, like, subscribe, do all that great YouTube stuff. My name is Eddy the Lawyer, and I'm going to see you in the next one. Peace.